The neutron star burned like a captive god. Around it, suspended in defiance of physics and reason, the Galactic Council citadel rotated in slow, deliberate silence. Its vast rings shimmered with layered shields, its inner chambers filled with species older than human civilization itself, beings who had outlived stars, who measured time in epochs, not years. Today, they had gathered for something unusual. A decision. At the center of the chamber, High Arbiter Zyrelthan stood motionless, its form shifting subtly with each pulse of the neutron star's radiation. It did not breathe. It did not blink. It simply existed, ancient and certain. Begin, it said. A lattice of light unfolded, projecting a rotating image of a blue planet, Earth. Species designation human, Zyrelthan continued. Admitted to the Council Network 72 standard cycles ago. Current classification unstable. Murmurs, translated into harmonic vibrations, pheromone shifts, and electromagnetic pulses, rippled across the chamber. A towering crystalline delegate refracted the projection through its body. They are recent. Primitive by comparison. Why convene a full assembly? Zyrelthan did not turn. Because they are accelerating. The projection shifted. Human ships, crude compared to Council vessels, flashed into view. Then more followed. Faster, sleeker. Evolving. Technological growth rate exceeds all recorded norms, the Arbiter said. Their advancement curve is not linear. It is reactive. A serpentine entity coiled tighter. Reactive to what? Conflict. Silence followed that. Another projection appeared. Wars. Human against human. Devastation. Then rebuilding. Each cycle faster than the last. They refine themselves through adversity, Zyrelthan said. Damage does not weaken them. It improves them. A low-frequency pulse emanated from a gas giant species. That is inefficient. Wasteful. And effective, Zyrelthan replied. The image shifted again, human colonies spreading beyond designated sectors. They disregard boundary protocols, it continued. They negotiate, then expand anyway. They cooperate, then innovate beyond agreements. The crystalline delegate flickered sharply. Then impose restrictions. We attempted that, said Zyrelthan. They complied, briefly. Then reinterpreted the terms. A pause. Then, quietly. They do not adapt to the galaxy. They force the galaxy to adapt to them. This time, no one interrupted. Thousands of light years away, Commander Elias Vance leaned over a tactical display, eyes narrowed. Run it again, he said. The simulation reset. Enemy ships, clean, precise formations, advance with mathematical certainty. Vance exhaled slowly. Predictable. His second-in-command frowned. They're flawless. That's the problem. The battle began again. This time, Vance altered the formation mid-engagement. His fleet split unevenly, breaking every conventional rule. Sir, that creates gaps. Exactly. The enemy's simulation adjusted, recalculating. It pursued the larger fragment, ignoring the smaller. Vance smiled faintly. There it is. The smaller group looped behind, striking supply nodes. The larger group scattered, drawing fire into an asteroid field. The simulation ended. Victory. His second-in-command stared. That shouldn't have worked. It wouldn't, Vance said, straightening. If they thought like us. Before another word could be spoken, the room dimmed. A transmission cut through every system. Unfamiliar. Structured. Alien. The Galactic Council seal appeared. The message was brief. Formal. Cold. All human expansion is to cease immediately. All technological development is to be submitted for Council oversight. Non-compliance will be considered a destabilizing act. Silence followed. In the command chamber, no one moved. Destabilizing. Someone muttered. That's a polite way of saying dangerous. Vance folded his arms. It's not a warning. It's a leash. Hours later, Earth's leadership convened. Debate fractured the room. We can't oppose them, one official argued. They've governed the galaxy for millennia. And stagnated it, another shot back. We hand over control, we stop evolving. They're offering protection. They're offering containment. All eyes turned to Vance. He didn't rush his answer. If we accept oversight, he said carefully, we don't just slow down. We stop being ourselves. And if we refuse? Someone pressed. Vance met their gaze. Then we find out why they're afraid of us. The reply was sent within the hour. Measured. Direct. We will cooperate. We will not submit. Back in the Citadel, the message echoed through the chamber. Cyrothan processed it in silence. No ambiguity, the crystalline delegate observed. No, Cyrothan agreed. None. A pause stretched, long enough to matter. Then the arbiter raised a limb, and the chamber stilled. Probability of future compliance, negligible, it said. Probability of uncontrolled expansion, absolute. The decision had already formed. Authorization granted, Cyrothan declared. Preemptive action is required. Across the chamber, ancient beings did not celebrate. They did not hesitate. They simply accepted. Far below, fleets began to move. Cyrothan looked once more at the image of Earth. Not with anger. Not with hatred. With certainty. Then humanity will be corrected. The first strike didn't come with a warning. It arrived as silence. On the outer colony of Kepri 9, orbital sensors flickered once, just a tremor in the data stream. Then they went dark. No alarms. No signatures. Just absence. Seconds later, the sky tore open. Ships slipped into existence without flare or distortion, their hulls smooth and unmarked, as if space itself had decided to take shape and descend. Precision beams lanced downward, carving through defense grids before they could even power up. Cities didn't burn. They vanished. On Earth, the alerts came too late. Multiple colonies offline, a systems officer said, voice tight. No distress signals. No debris fields. Elias Vance didn't look up immediately. Not possible. It is now, she replied, pulling up fragmented telemetry. Whatever hit them, it bypassed early detection entirely. Another voice cut in. Sir, we're picking up fleet movements across 3 sectors. Coordinated. Vance stepped closer to the display. Red markers bloomed across the map. Too many, too fast. Not random. Calculated. They're not probing, he said quietly. They're executing. Within minutes, Earth's Defense Command shifted into emergency mode. Admirals argued. Systems recalibrated. Civilian networks flooded with fragmented reports, entire populations cut off mid-sentence. They're hitting infrastructure first, someone noted. Shipyards, relays, energy hubs. Decapitation strategy, another added. Cripple response before it forms. Vance exhaled slowly, forcing clarity through the noise. Stop trying to protect everything. The room stilled. What? An admiral snapped. We can't cover all fronts, Vance said. If we try, we lose all of them. Prioritize. Based on what? Survival. He pointed at the map. Core fleet assets. Communication hubs we can still defend. Anything that lets us regroup. And the rest? Vance didn't hesitate. We let it go. No one liked it. No one argued. The first human fleet mobilized within the hour. They didn't look impressive. Angular hulls, visible armor plating, systems patched and repurposed from decades of incremental upgrades. Against the Council's seamless vessels, they seemed crude. Vance stood on the command deck of the Resolute, watching the stars stretch into motion. Enemy formation? He asked. Tight, his tactical officer replied. Symmetrical. No deviation. Of course it is. The projection filled the air, Council ships arranged in perfect geometric alignment, advancing with mechanical grace. Orders? The officer asked. Vance studied the pattern. then smiled faintly. Break ours. The officer blinked. Sir? Split the fleet. Unevenly. That'll create blind spots. Exactly. A pause. Then, reluctantly, the command was relayed. Human ships scattered, not chaotically, but irregularly. No symmetry. No predictable spacing. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Council fleet reacted. They're adjusting, the officer said. Recalculating trajectories. Watch where they commit, Vance murmured. The larger human formation drew the bulk of the response. Enemy ships converged, tightening their formation to eliminate it efficiently. No, Vance said. The smaller group accelerated, slipping behind the advancing line. Not toward the ships, but toward the support vessels trailing them. Target their logistics, Vance ordered. Not their guns. The first human volleys weren't elegant. They weren't precise. But they were unexpected. Supply carriers ruptured. Energy relays flickered. For the first time, the Council formation hesitated. Minimal disruption, the tactical officer reported. But it's there. It's enough, Vance said. Meanwhile, the larger human force didn't hold position. It fractured again, retreating, not in a straight line, but into a dense asteroid field nearby. They're pursuing, the officer said. Directly. Vance nodded. They will. Inside the field, visibility dropped. Sensor interference spiked. Predictive models faltered. Human ships weaved through the debris, engines flaring unpredictably. Council vessels followed, still precise, still controlled, but now constrained by uncertainty. The first collisions weren't dramatic. A miscalculated turn. A delayed adjustment. Then another. Sir, the officer said, almost disbelieving. They're struggling. Because this isn't a problem you solve cleanly, Vance replied. It's one you survive messy. Hours later, the battle ended. Not with victory, but with survival. The colony they'd defended still stood, damaged, shaken, but intact. The Council fleet withdrew, not routed, but disrupted enough to reassess. On the Resolute, the atmosphere remained tense. We lost 12 ships, the officer said quietly. Vance nodded. We kept the system. That wasn't a win. No, Vance agreed. But it wasn't what they expected either. Far away, in the Citadel, Zyrelthan observed the engagement in silence. Data streams flowed, each outcome analyzed, each deviation recorded. They deviated from optimal patterns, a subordinate noted. They abandoned efficiency, another added. Zyrelthan processed the information. Incorrect, it said at last. They redefined it. A pause. Deploy additional fleets, the Arbiter commanded. Increase pressure across all sectors. Projection? A voice asked. Zyrelthan turned its attention back to the image of human movements, erratic, inconsistent, alive. Escalation required, it said. On Earth, Vance stood alone for a moment, staring at the dimming tactical display. They're not testing us, his second-in-command said quietly. Vance shook his head. No, he replied. They're trying to end this before we figure them out. He glanced at the scattered fleet markers, damaged, but still moving. A slow breath. Good, he said. Sir? Vance's expression hardened. Because now we know how they think. He turned back to the command deck. And they have no idea how we do. War didn't settle into rhythm. It fractured. Where the Galactic Council advanced with layered precision, humanity responded with something far harder to chart. Fleets no longer moved as singular units. Authority dispersed. Decisions happened closer to the fight, shaped by incomplete data and instinct rather than perfect calculation. It unsettled their enemy. On the command deck of the Resolute, Elias Vance watched a battle unfold across 3 overlapping sectors. Status? He asked. Independent squadrons engaging without central coordination, the tactical officer replied. They're improvising. Vance nodded. Good. Good? she echoed. We've lost synchronized targeting. Response times vary wildly. And they can't model us anymore, Vance said. The display flickered with conflicting maneuvers. One group retreated too early. Another advanced without support. A third looped wide, ignoring direct engagement entirely. Messy. Unpredictable. Alive. Across the void, Council forces adapted the only way they knew how, by refining control. Formations tightened. Response algorithms recalibrated. Predictive matrices expanded to include broader behavioral ranges. Still, it wasn't enough. They are generating too many variables, a subordinate reported within the Citadel. Zyrel then absorbed the data without visible reaction. Then reduce the variables, it said. Increase pressure. Concentrated strikes? System-wide suppression. The next wave hit harder. Entire sectors came under coordinated assault, forcing human fleets into constant motion. No time to regroup. No stable front lines. And yet, something shifted. Sir, you need to see this. Vance turned as a new feed replaced the tactical map. A grainy transmission from a frontline squadron filled the screen. The pilot's voice came through, strained but steady. We've modified the targeting array. It's reading fluctuations in their shield harmonics. Not perfect, but... The feed cut as weapons fire lit the background. Moments later, data packets followed. Vance scanned them quickly. They built this mid-engagement? Yes, sir. A faint smile touched his expression. Push it fleet-wide. That's untested. So are we, he replied. Within hours, the adjustment spread. Human ships began landing strikes that shouldn't have connected, brief openings, exploited in seconds. Council defenses adapted, but not fast enough to erase the gap completely. Small gains, but consistent. The turning point came in the Hadris Expanse. A region few navigators favored, gravitational distortions warp sensors, and spatial drift made precise movement unreliable. Council fleets avoided it when possible. Vance didn't. Broadcast false retreat vectors, he ordered. Make it look like we're falling back through the expanse. His second-in-command frowned. They'll pursue. That's the idea. And our own systems won't hold up in there. Vance met her gaze. Ours don't have to be perfect. Just better than theirs in chaos. The trap closed quietly. Council ships entered the expanse in flawless formation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the distortions took hold. Sensor feeds lagged. Coordinates drifted. Predictive paths misaligned by fractions, small errors, compounding rapidly. Human ships didn't resist it. They leaned into it. Engines flared at irregular intervals. Vectors shifted mid-burn. Pilots abandoned strict targeting solutions, firing based on visual confirmation and instinct. Contact on port. No, starboard, just fire! A voice crackled over comms. Missiles curved unpredictably, guided as much by chance as design. And it worked. Council formations began to fracture, not from damage alone, but from hesitation. Their systems struggled to reconcile conflicting data. Perfect responses arrived a second too late. Sir, the tactical officer said, barely containing disbelief, they're losing cohesion. Because they're trying to control something that won't stay still, Vance replied. One by one, Council ships disengaged, pulling back to re-establish stable parameters. For the first time since the war began, a human force held the field. The victory rippled outward. Not decisive. Not overwhelming. But undeniable. Across the network, other species watched. Not openly. Not yet. But the data circulated. Humans could be resisted. Humans could not be predicted. On the Resolute, the atmosphere remained subdued. We won, someone said quietly. Vance didn't respond immediately. Define won, he said at last. We forced a retreat. We held the sector. And lost 18 ships doing it. Silence settled again. Victory had weight. Later, alone in the observation corridor, Vance stood before the slow drift of distant stars. His second-in-command approached without a word. "We received confirmation," she said. "The Ardent didn't make it out." Vance closed his eyes briefly. He'd known. "Captain Rhea?" he asked. She nodded. For a moment neither spoke. "She chose to stay behind," the officer added. "Drew their fire long enough for the rest to break contact." Vance exhaled, steady but heavy. "She always did like impossible odds." A faint, humorless smile passed between them. Then it was gone. Back in the Citadel, Zyrel then reviewed the Hadris engagement. "They entered a non-optimal environment intentionally," a subordinate observed. "They weaponized instability," another added. Zyrel then processed the conclusion. "They are not bound by efficiency," it said. "They redefine success under changing conditions." A pause. For the first time, the subordinate ventured. "Probability models showed deviation beyond acceptable thresholds." Zyrel then turned its attention fully to the data. "Then the models are insufficient," it replied. On Earth, Vance returned to the command deck, expression sharpened. "They're learning," his officer said. "So are we." He looked at the expanding map, front lines shifting, patterns dissolving. "They rely on certainty," he said. "We don't give them any." A beat. "Prepare the next phase." "What's the objective?" Vance's gaze hardened. "End this on our terms." The trap required patience. For weeks, humanity appeared to falter. Supply lines thinned. Outer systems were abandoned with little resistance. Fleets retreated in uneven patterns, leaving behind fragments of wreckage and broken signals, just enough to suggest exhaustion. On the surface, it looked like collapse. That was the point. "They're consolidating," a council analyst observed within the Citadel. "Toward a central defensive zone," another added. "Predictable." Zyrel then studied the projection in silence. Human fleet positions clustered near a seemingly vulnerable corridor, narrow, exposed, strategically questionable. "A final stand," the analyst concluded. Zyrel then did not respond immediately. Then, quietly, "Or an invitation. Probability of deception? Non-zero." A pause. "Proceed," Zyrel then ordered. "Commit full force." On the Resolute, Elias Vance watched the same map from the opposite perspective. "They're taking the bait," his tactical officer said. Vance nodded once. "They always would." "You're certain they won't suspect?" "They already do," he replied. "They just think they can solve it anyway." Around them, human fleets held position, scattered, quiet, waiting. Before the first shot, a transmission cut through the silence. Unencrypted. Direct. "Commander Elias Vance," came the voice, measured, precise. "This is High Arbiter Zyrel Than." The bridge stilled. Vance stepped forward. "You've got my attention. You have demonstrated adaptive capability beyond initial projections," Zyrel Than said. "Yet your current formation indicates strategic exhaustion." Vance allowed a faint smile. "Or something else. A final engagement will determine outcome," the Arbiter continued. "Stand down. Submit to oversight. Preservation remains possible." Vance glanced at the fleet markers. Hundreds of ships, each one carrying lives that depended on what came next. "Let me ask you something," he said. "Have you ever been wrong?" A pause. "Error margins exist," Zyrel then replied. "No," Vance said. "I mean truly wrong. The kind that changes how you see everything." Silence stretched across the channel. "We do not rely on perception," the Arbiter said at last. "We rely on certainty." Vance's expression hardened. "That's your weakness." The transmission ended. The battle began without fanfare. Council ships advanced in perfect alignment, their formations spanning the corridor like an unbreakable wall. Energy signatures spiked, weapons primed with clinical precision. Human fleets didn't respond immediately. They waited. At the last possible moment, Vance gave the command. Execute. The first movement was subtle. Human ships shifted, not backward, not forward, but sideways. Small adjustments, irregular spacing. Enough to disrupt targeting solutions. Council systems recalculated instantly. Then the second layer unfolded. Decoy signatures ignited across the field, ghost fleets mimicking real ones, drawing fire into empty space. Council weapons struck nothing, their accuracy wasted on illusions. They're masking their positions, the tactical officer said. Not masking, Vance replied. Confusing. The corridor itself came alive. Hidden charges detonated in sequence, not to destroy, but to reshape the battlefield. Debris fields erupted, scattering fragments across key vectors. Radiation bursts distorted sensors just enough to matter. Council formations tightened in response. That was the mistake. No, Vance said. Human ships surged forward, not as a unified front, but as intersecting paths. Each vessel moved with partial autonomy, reacting in real time, exploiting gaps the moment they appeared. Council ships fired with flawless precision. But precision required clarity. And clarity was gone. Formation integrity dropping, the tactical officer reported. They're compensating, but it's slower than before. Because they're second-guessing, Vance said. A council cruiser broke formation, just slightly, to avoid incoming debris. Another adjusted to cover the gap. The perfect geometry fractured. Human ships slipped through. Targeting shifted, not to the strongest points, but to the connections between them. Energy relays. Coordination nodes. The structure that held the formation together. One by one, those links failed. In the heart of the battle, the Resolute took a direct hit. The deck shuddered, lights flickering. Shields at 40%. Someone shouted. Hold course, Vance ordered. Sir, we need to pull back. Not yet. He watched the collapsing enemy formation, calculations running behind his steady gaze. There. A narrow opening. Temporary. Unstable. Full thrust, he said. That vector's exposed. Do it. The Resolute surged forward, cutting through the chaos. Enemy fire converged, too late to stop it completely. Target locked, the tactical officer said, voice tight. Primary command vessel. Fire. The shot wasn't perfect. It didn't need to be. The impact rippled across the council formation. Not destruction, disruption. Enough to cascade through their already strained coordination. For the first time, their advance faltered completely. Minutes later, the battlefield shifted. Council ships disengaged, not in panic, but in controlled withdrawal. Order reasserted itself, but the momentum was gone. They're pulling back, the officer said. Vance exhaled slowly. Let them. The transmission returned. Commander Vance, Zyrothan said, its tone unchanged. Your strategy introduced unacceptable uncertainty. Vance leaned against the console, exhaustion finally visible. That's what we do. A pause. You cannot be controlled, the Arbiter said. No, Vance replied. But we can be reasoned with. Another silence, longer this time. Hostilities will cease, Zyrothan said at last. For now. The channel closed. The stars settled into quiet. Damaged ships drifted, survivors regrouping in the aftermath of something larger than a single battle. On the Resolute, no one cheered. They had endured. They had held. Vance looked out at the scattered fleet, each vessel still moving, still alive. They measured strength and certainty, he said quietly. His second-in-command glanced at him. And us? Vance's gaze remained fixed on the stars. We survive in Defiance,